In 2024, more than 75,000 people in LA County were living without stable housing. That's not just a number, that's enough to fill Dodger Stadium and still leave people waiting outside.
They will block off entire streets, kick everybody off, clear out all the tents.
I mean, just being out here, you're exposed all the time, 24/7, and eventually you're going to come across something bad.
And still leave people waiting outside. Behind that figure are lives disrupted by rising rents, unexpected bills, and support systems that didn't show up in time. These aren't isolated stories. They're signs of a system under strain and a city struggling to hold everyone in. In today's video, we'll take a closer look beyond the bright surface of the city, into the overlooked spaces where everyday struggles quietly unfold, and where the promise of opportunity feels increasingly out of reach. As usual, this is not a pessimistic warning, but a perspective reflecting multiple sources to help the community understand better and prepare proactively. Are you ready to explore the dark side of the most vibrant and luxurious city in America? Let's start right now. Not far from downtown Los Angeles lies Echo Park, a green space once known for its peaceful lake, palm-lined walkways, and iconic swan pedal boats. For years, it served as a kind of outdoor living room for the surrounding community, a place for morning walks, Tai Chi groups, weekend picnics, and quiet reflection. But in recent years, the park has taken on a different role, not by design, but by circumstance. And in that shift, it has quietly raised larger questions about how urban spaces respond to broader social pressure. By early 2021, Echo Park had become home to a visible encampment of people living without permanent shelter. According to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, LAHSA, around 200 individuals were residing in the park during its peak. The broader area, Council District 13, saw an increase of nearly 80% in people experiencing housing instability between 2016 and 2020. These changes didn't occur overnight. Rather, they were the result of rising housing costs, limited access to long-term affordable options, and changes in employment patterns across the region. In Los Angeles, the average rent for a one-bedroom apartment is now over $2,300 per month. To comfortably afford that rent under the standard 30% income-to-housing ratio, a person would need to earn over $90,000 annually. Yet the median income in Los Angeles is approximately $45,000, less than half of that threshold. For many residents, especially those living on fixed incomes or depending on part-time work, the math no longer balances. When individuals or families can no longer sustain the cost of housing, some turn to their vehicles. Others stay with relatives or friends for as long as possible. And some, eventually, turn to public spaces like parks. Not because they are ideal, but because they are open and available. The result, in places like Echo Park, is a transformation of how the space functions. Walking paths that once felt open may begin to feel more constrained. Restrooms that were designed for day-use visitors may see greater demand. Areas once used for exercise groups or children's play may become quieter, or in some cases, repurposed altogether. For nearby residents, especially older adults who visited the park regularly, these changes may have led to a shift in routine. A 2021 neighborhood survey found that nearly 40% of local residents over the age of 50 had reduced or stopped their visits to Echo Park during the height of the encampment period. Some cited uncertainty about safety, while others pointed to a lack of open seating or accessible paths. For individuals managing mobility issues or chronic conditions, even minor changes in environment can create hesitation or stress. And while some public programming continued during this period, others, like weekend markets, walking clubs, and community fitness sessions, were relocated or paused. These kinds of low-impact social activities are often particularly valuable to older residents, not just for physical health, but also for social connection and daily structure. When they disappear, the absence may not be immediately visible, but it can be felt in subtler ways, in loneliness, reduced movement, or a narrowing of social routines. At the same time, the individuals who stayed in the park created their own rhythms of life. Informal communities formed. Some residents organised food distribution stations or kept common areas clean. Volunteers brought in water, hygiene supplies and basic medical support. Still, services remained inconsistent. Access to restrooms, for instance, was limited to daylight hours, and shelters or long-term solutions weren't always readily available. In March 2021, the City of Los Angeles conducted a coordinated effort to clear the park. More than 400 personnel participated, and a fence was erected around the space for several months. During that period, the city reported that 183 individuals were offered housing placements, although follow-up data indicated that fewer than half remained in those programs 6 months later, highlighting ongoing challenges with long-term stability. The park eventually reopened with renovations, newly planted grass, repaired infrastructure, and restored landscaping. Yet for many who lived nearby, the experience had already altered how they viewed the space. Some began to use it again, while others chose new routines altogether. And for those who had lived there temporarily, the question of where to go next remained. This shift raises broader questions, not only about housing, but about public spaces themselves. When parks are used in ways that weren't originally intended, how should communities respond? Should public space remain flexible in times of need, or should it be protected for recreation alone? There may be no single answer, but the impact of these changes often extends beyond headlines or statistics. For middle-aged and older residents, particularly those who rely on public parks for regular walking, group activities, or calm reflection, shifts in space usage can feel personal. The absence of routine can gradually lead to other changes: fewer steps taken per day, fewer conversations with familiar faces, or even fewer reasons to leave the house. And these seemingly small adjustments can ripple outward into overall well-being, mental clarity, and sense of connection to the neighborhood. Meanwhile, those working in nearby small businesses may have experienced changes in customer flow. A drop in casual parkgoers might mean fewer cups of coffee sold, quieter lunch hours, or changes in how local events are planned. While these impacts may not appear dramatic on their own, over time they influence how a neighborhood feels and functions. Public spaces like Echo Park are more than just green areas. They are shared environments shaped by the people who use them and the pressures they absorb. The events that unfolded here over recent years reflect not just a specific crisis, but a pattern seen across many US cities. When housing becomes inaccessible for some, the consequences often appear first in the spaces we all share. And so the question lingers, not to prompt a specific conclusion, but to invite reflection. When a familiar place changes, do we change with it, or do we slowly let it go? Just a few blocks from the financial towers and concert halls of downtown Los Angeles lies Skid Row, a neighborhood with a name that has become almost synonymous with hardship. Yet for many Angelenos, the area remains unfamiliar beyond the headlines. It is often seen from a distance, through a car window or a news segment. But behind those quick impressions lies a more complex story, one that reflects deep structural patterns and whose impact reaches far beyond its 50 square blocks. According to the 2023 Greater Los Angeles homeless count, Skid Row is home to an estimated 4,400 individuals living without stable housing in an area of just 0.4 square miles. That translates to over 11,000 people per square mile, a population density higher than many entire cities, but without the infrastructure to support it. For comparison, the overall population density of Los Angeles is approximately 8,500 people per square mile, most of whom live in formal housing with access to plumbing, electricity, and city services. This kind of compressed reality affects everything: from sanitation and emergency services to basic mobility. Sidewalks often serve as both thoroughfare and living space. Streets designed for light foot traffic now carry the burden of tents, carts, aid stations, and service workers moving from site to site. And while the concentration of support services in Skid Row, including shelters, clinics, and food distribution centres, was intended to make help more accessible, it has also created a kind of bottleneck where need often exceeds capacity. The result isn't just visible, it's functional. Paramedics responding to calls in Skid Row report longer on-scene times due to congestion, while nearby hospital emergency rooms often see higher visit volumes from individuals without access to preventive care. These slowdowns don't only affect those in the immediate area. They can also extend to surrounding neighbourhoods, where wait times and response resources may be stretched thin. Something residents might notice even if they've never walked through Skid Row themselves for those who live or work nearby, including small business owners, delivery drivers, building staff, or courthouse employees. The density of need can lead to changes in how public space is navigated and experienced. Deliveries may be delayed. Staff may require new protocols for entering and exiting buildings. Security costs might rise. And for some, even the commute may shift, with drivers choosing alternate routes or adjusted hours. It's not uncommon for older residents in the broader downtown area, particularly those living in senior housing or relying on public transit, to adjust their routes around Skid Row. Not necessarily out of judgment, but often because of limited accessibility. Narrowed sidewalks, sudden crowds, or unexpected obstructions can become a real concern for someone with mobility issues or health conditions. These aren't dramatic shifts, but they add up, in time, in energy, in how one moves through a city. Interestingly, the very visibility of Skid Row has also made it a focal point for volunteerism, public policy, and media attention. Faith groups, student organisations, and non-profits have long organised outreach in the area. City programs have been piloted here before expanding elsewhere. But visibility can be a double-edged sword. Concentrating so many services in one space can mean easier access. But it also means the area becomes heavily burdened, without always having the resources to match. There's a term used in urban planning called service clustering. It refers to the strategy of placing related services in close proximity to increase efficiency. But when the volume of need outpaces what the cluster can offer, the strain begins to show, in both the environment and the people who live and work there. For the broader public, these realities may feel distant, but their effects are more connected than they appear. If an emergency vehicle takes longer to arrive because it's responding from downtown, that delay can affect someone 10 miles away. If a hospital nearby becomes overwhelmed, the ripple touches other branches. If public funds are reallocated to address the pressures in this single district, the impact may be felt in services elsewhere, in parks, libraries, or road maintenance in a completely different neighbourhood. There's no single narrative for Skid Row. For some, it's a place of outreach. For others, a place avoided. But for the city, it functions as a kind of pressure valve, absorbing challenges that could otherwise be spread across dozens of zip codes. Whether that's sustainable remains a question not just for planners, but for everyone who shares the larger map of Los Angeles. Along the edge of the Pacific, Venice Beach stretches out with a kind of cinematic familiarity. Rollerbladers coasting past street performers, souvenir stalls beside surfboards, palm trees silhouetted against the sun. For decades, it has been both a tourist attraction and a neighbourhood, a destination and a home. But in recent years, the beachfront has taken on an additional role, one that quietly mirrors the tension between public image and private reality. By mid-2021, city reports estimated that nearly 200 individuals were living along the Venice Beach boardwalk in tents and temporary shelters. That number fluctuated, as it often does, but it marked a significant increase from previous years. According to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, the number of people without stable housing in Council District 11, which includes Venice, grew by over 58% between 2016 and 2020. These changes didn't happen in isolation. Venice, like other areas of Los Angeles, has seen a steady rise in housing costs. In 2024, the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment near Venice Beach exceeded $3,000 per month, a figure well out of reach for many who once called the neighborhood home. Even for long-time residents, especially retirees or small business owners, such increases have forced difficult decisions: downsize, move farther inland, or live with ongoing financial strain. As more people found themselves without permanent shelter, the beachfront, long a space of recreation, became a site of adaptation. Makeshift camps emerged along the boardwalk. Some residents arranged their tents neatly and stayed within small designated areas. Others built temporary structures to withstand wind or rain. These were not random encampments, but spaces born out of necessity, often organized and sometimes even maintained with a sense of dignity. For regular visitors, however, the shift was hard to miss. Fitness classes, vendor markets, and casual beach strolls were now interspersed with sites of daily survival: bedding, storage bins, or shared kitchens. Some residents expressed concern, not out of disdain, but out of uncertainty. Where once there had been open space and predictability, now there was unpredictability. A feeling that could be especially unsettling for older individuals used to routine environments. Local businesses also felt the shift. A survey by the Venice Chamber of Commerce in late 2021 noted that over 60% of storefronts near the boardwalk reported a decline in foot traffic, with some citing concerns among tourists or reduced local turnout. While some shops adapted by reducing hours or shifting to online sales, others, particularly small cafes or activity-based rentals, saw changes they couldn't offset. These impacts weren't catastrophic in every case, but they were cumulative. Fewer walk-in customers, tighter margins, increased need for maintenance or security. For older residents in the area, the effects may have been more personal. Many had long relied on the beach as part of a daily rhythm: morning walks along the shore, group stretches near the sand, or simply the comfort of familiar surroundings. With the changing landscape, some adjusted their routes. Others stayed indoors more often. And while these shifts might appear minor, they affect physical health, social connection, and the subtle structure of everyday life, especially for those living alone or managing age-related health concerns. In response, the city launched a coordinated outreach program in 2021, known as Encampment to Home, aiming to offer transitional housing and services to those living along the boardwalk. By August of that year, over 140 individuals were placed into temporary housing, though follow-up data showed varying degrees of long-term success. Some found more stable paths forward, while others cycled back into public space due to limited availability of permanent options. The cleanup of the boardwalk was widely publicized, and the area now reflects a return to its former image, at least on the surface. But even as tourists return and events resume, the memory of that transitional period remains, especially for those who live nearby. What once felt like a purely recreational zone now carries additional weight. A reminder of the city's broader housing challenges and the thin line between stability and displacement. For viewers who have visited Venice Beach, the contrast may feel striking. Perhaps you remember a time when the boardwalk was part of your travel memories, or a regular stop on your weekend route. Or maybe you live in a coastal town yourself, where similar tensions are starting to appear. Familiar faces disappearing, public spaces becoming more complex. The story of Venice Beach isn't just about tourism or crisis. It's about how spaces adapt under pressure, and how those adaptations affect not only the people living in them, but also those who visit, work nearby, or hold memories tied to the place. In a city as vast and layered as Los Angeles, it's easy to draw lines between neighborhoods. But as Venice shows, those lines are more permeable than they seem. When we talk about housing instability in cities like Los Angeles, it's easy to focus on what's most visible: tents in public parks, encampments on sidewalks, or clusters of temporary shelters. But beyond these images are quieter consequences that affect far more people than we often realize. As the cost of living continues to rise, the ripple effects of housing instability are reaching deeper into everyday life, including the lives of those who may never consider themselves at risk. In Los Angeles County, more than 70,000 individuals are currently experiencing homelessness, according to the 2023 Greater Los Angeles Homeless Count. But this number only tells part of the story. According to the UCLA Luskin Institute, nearly 600,000 people in the region are considered housing insecure, meaning they are one missed paycheck, one rent hike, or one emergency away from losing their homes. For city systems, this growing instability adds strain across multiple sectors. Emergency rooms see increased visits from people without regular access to preventive care, resulting in longer wait times for everyone. Public transportation routes adjust to accommodate shifting patterns of movement, especially when people must travel farther to find services or shelter. In schools, student turnover rises as families move frequently, affecting classroom consistency and funding tied to enrollment. These shifts are rarely headline news, but they show up in subtle ways. A commuter might notice buses are more crowded. A retiree might wait longer for a routine appointment. A local park may see fewer maintenance hours as funds are redirected. Individually, these changes seem small, but collectively, they reshape how a city functions day to day. For those in midlife or retirement, particularly those living on fixed incomes, the effects can be even more personal. Rising property taxes or increased utility costs can tighten household budgets. Adult children or grandchildren may move back in, combining households to manage expenses. Some may find themselves taking on part-time work longer than planned. These adaptations often go unspoken, but they quietly shift expectations about aging, independence, and family roles. And while not everyone is directly impacted, nearly everyone knows someone who is. A co-worker quietly struggling with rent. A neighbor who moved away without saying much. A local store that quietly closed after decades in the neighborhood. These signs are easy to miss, unless you're looking for them. Housing instability is not isolated to one zip code or one type of person. It touches public services, work routines, family structures, and neighborhood rhythms. And while the most visible expressions of it appear in places like Echo Park or Skid Row, its reach extends into offices, classrooms, and living rooms across the city. The impacts may be quiet, but they're not distant. While the challenges of housing instability in Los Angeles are often discussed in terms of scale and urgency, there are also efforts quietly unfolding, programs, partnerships, and individual journeys that hint at the possibility of change. These stories may not make headlines, but they represent a growing recognition that addressing the issue is not only about emergency response, but about long-term planning, coordination, and timing. In recent years, the city has invested in a number of initiatives aimed at transitional and permanent supportive housing. One such example is the Housing First approach, which prioritizes getting people into stable housing before addressing other needs. According to the Los Angeles Homeless Services Authority, individuals placed in supportive housing under this model are more than 80% likely to remain housed after 1 year. That rate has remained relatively steady, even as demand for such programs continues to grow, but access remains uneven. Waitlists for permanent housing can be long, and availability varies by district. Some people are offered temporary shelter, only to find themselves back on the street when those options expire. Others are eligible for assistance, but are unable to connect with the right agency at the right time. The result is a system that works, but not always fast enough or wide enough. For those watching from outside the system, the question often becomes, what actually helps? The answer isn't always simple. Some people need medical care or documentation support before they can enter a housing program. Others need assistance navigating paperwork or access to basic communication tools like a phone or email. These small gaps can create long delays, not because of unwillingness, but because of process. And yet, within this complexity, there are quiet stories of progress. A woman who lived in her car for 2 years now works as a peer support advocate in a housing program. A former street vendor was able to move into an apartment through a rapid rehousing grant and has started a mobile business. These successes don't erase the larger challenge, but they add nuance to it, reminding us that each statistic includes a real person whose circumstances can change with the right support at the right time. For viewers, especially those who may know someone facing housing difficulties, these stories may feel familiar. A family member navigating unemployment, a neighbor needing to downsize, an older friend considering shared housing to stretch retirement income. These are not distant issues. They're often just one conversation, one step, or one policy away from touching home. There may be no single solution, but across the city, there are signs of what's possible when services align, and when people are given not just shelter, but a chance to restart. Sometimes, a small moment of stability becomes the foundation for something larger. The truth is, homelessness in Los Angeles isn't just a crisis. It's a reflection of what we value, of who we notice, and who we overlook. More than 75,000 people in LA County are without a permanent home. That's not just a number. It's families, veterans, young people, all navigating circumstances that many of us hope we'll never face. We've seen the gaps, but we've also seen the solutions. Housing first programs, supportive outreach, and community efforts that center on dignity and care, not punishment. But for these solutions to grow, it takes a decision. So ask yourself, what kind of city do we want to build? Do we turn away when it's hard, or step forward with understanding, action, and hope? If this video made you pause, made you reflect, please like, share, and subscribe to support more conversations like this. Let's keep learning, connecting, and working towards something better. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next video. Disclaimer. This video is based on publicly available data, expert reports, and first-hand accounts. It is intended for educational and awareness purposes only. We do not provide legal, medical, or financial advice. Viewers are encouraged to seek professional guidance where needed and to consider their own context before taking any action.